Hey there, Tony here. And I want to take a few minutes and kind of talk to you about this book, Cashflow Quadrant. This book came out in 1999, just before the new millennium. And it was one of them game changer books. I remember when I went to buy this book, I went into it's called a Barnes& and Noble. And I walked into the Barnes& and Noble, and they had Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and they had this book. And they said, you got to get a hold of this book. You got to read it. You got to see what's going on with it. And I can tell you that between Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the Cash Flow Quadrant, it changed my life. The books were pretty new, so this had to be, right around 2000 that I got a hold of Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the Cash Flow Quadrant. And once I got a hold of this, let me tell you something. It was a game changer. Now you might say, well, what's the big deal about this book? Well, the big deal about the book at the time was it talked about people operating in one of four different quadrants. He said that, some people were E's. Those are people who were employees. They basically traded their time for dollars. Then you had S. S people who were self-employed. So they traded their time for dollars as well, but they owned the job. Doctors, lawyers, those type of people would be considered S quadrant. And then you have B. B was business owners. And with the B quadrant, what happened was then you had systems working for you and systems creating income for you. And then finally, you had the I quadrant. And the I quadrant was when you have money working for you. You trade money for money. Your money is creating income for you. Now, because back then, the whole idea of this was so radical, and because it was such a pattern interrupt to many different people, Robert, he villainized the left side of the quadrant. He said only losers are there. I mean, the mindset was if you were on the E or the S part of the quadrant, you were doing something wrong. And you might say, well, the S quadrant, what's the difference between the S quadrant and the B quadrant? Well, what he said was, if you could walk away from your business and spend a 6 months on a cruise and come back and the business is doing better than it was before you left, then you were in the B quadrant. But if you didn't have systems in place that allowed you to be able to walk away from that business, then you were chained to that business and you were in the S quadrant. So what's the answer? You might say, is it that cut and dry? Well, one of the updates for the new millennium, one of the updates for the new decade, because believe it or not, we got about a month, a little over a month, and we're in a new decade, the 2020s. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Well, one of the things that he's softened on, and that I've really, it's funny, after I heard about this from Robert Kiyosaki, I was so taken by what he said that he was doing a number of these seminars throughout the country. And he would do these weekend seminars. Well, on my own dime, I got into a car and I would drive from Columbus, Ohio, sometimes as far as Pittsburgh, to go to one of his seminars. Now you might say, well, why'd you go to sit and and work there and whatever? No. I mean, to listen? No, I went there to work. I actually volunteered at his events so I could get FaceTime with the dude. And you may have seen some pictures of me and him together. It was because I wanted to understand more about what this dude was coming from. So it got to the point where at his seminars, he would have me standing behind the counter selling some of his products. And what that did for me was to help me understand and get a depth on what he was talking about. Okay? So what's the real answer here? Do you have to, because back then, if you read the book, it talked about if you were in the E quadrant, you were really messing up. And you needed to find some way to get to the S quadrant and work your way from the S quadrant to the B quadrant. And one day you would take that B quadrant, maybe sell the business, put it all in investments, and live off the investments. And the I quadrant was the holy grail. That's where you wanted to end up. That was the place you wanted to be. Well, it's not that cut and dry. Because you know something? And I'm not sure if he came out and said it or if other people have come out and said it since then, but most entrepreneurs operate in all 4 quadrants. Think about that. Most entrepreneurs operate in all 4 quadrants, and that's really the big distinction point that you need to get here. In some cases, they're employees, okay? They may be employees of their own corporation, but they're employees nevertheless. Yes, they have an S quadrant piece to it that, yes, they're bringing a certain magic to this table where, hey, if they weren't around, it couldn't get down, okay? They're building a business, or they have a business in place, and they're also funding investments. You know, I think of someone like a Grant Cardone. He's an employee of Grant Cardone Enterprises. He's definitely, his face is out there. He's doing all those videos. He's on social media. He's doing all those different things. So he's definitely in that regard too. But the cool thing is, he's also got a business in place where he has people working for him that regardless of whether he's there or not, things can happen. And then finally, wow, my ring light just went crazy on me. Anyway, finally, he's also investments, and he's has over $1 billion investments. So he's an example of someone who has. Oh, now can you see me? Yeah, you can see me now for sure. Anyway, he's an example of someone who's operating in all 4 quadrants. What's the rule? What's the answer to that for you? Learn how to be in all 4 quadrants. Think about that. So, as you guys know, I have been talking about the top 5 books that you should be reading between now and the end of the year to get ready for the new decade. Spoiler alert, this is not one of them. This is, as good as this book is, as transformative as this book is, this is not one of them. Now, if you want to know what's one of them, I want you to send me a message, a private message. I'll respond back to you with the top 5 books that you should not only be reading, but you should be studying as we move into 2020. Be happy to get that to you. Look, hey, this Kiyosaki book, look, it's all beat up and stuff. It has highlights and stuff in it. I have read this book, but it's not the top 5. You want the top 5? Inbox me, and I'll get that to you. So we'll be talking soon. I'll be here tomorrow with some more information for you. Till then, be blessed, my friend. I'll see you later. Bye-bye now.